So the Scandinavian defense begins with the moves e4 and then d5 for black. And here white will most likely capture your pawn with their e-pawn. This is the most played move 60% of the time. And I will show you a way to play the Scandinavian defense so that you can use the same setup against anything white does and you don't need to study any theory. So here we will recapture the pawn with queen takes d5. Of course white has a lot of possible moves here, but most of the time they will always play this knight to attack your queen. Even if they play something else, it doesn't matter, you will just stick to the same moves every single time. So we are going to play the variation with the queen all the way back to d8. And this way we were able to take out the white central pawn on e4, and we also have our queen open on this file. Then here white again has a couple of different moves. Most likely they will play knight f3, d4 or bishop c4, and they will alternate these moves. So here I'm going to show you if white starts with d4. So we are going to play knight f6 just to develop our knight, also to have a little bit more control over the center, because we don't want white to be able to push this pawn too early. Also we want to castle quickly. I'm going to show you knight f3 here, but even if bishop c4, all of these are the same. And we will play the move e6. So e6 just because we want to quickly first develop our dark squared bishop and then we are going to castle. So again a move for white, bishop c4 is the most played move, bishop e7, castles. And this is our starting position, so this is really easy setup to know. Just play d5, they will capture you and then you go for this setup. And then I will show you how to develop all of your pieces here. So white has of course different options here. But bishop f4 could be played, bishop g5 could be played, rook e1 could be played. But again, it doesn't really matter what white plays. We're going to do the same thing every single time. Our plan is to develop this knight to c6. And if you have never seen this might look a little bit strange, because you might think, well, is white just not going to be able to push? And then it's a little bit annoying here, your knight is under attack. And I mean, if you take this, well, you get something like this. But there is a small trick here you need to know. If white pushes this, which is actually played quite a lot, but it's not a good move, you have knight to a5. Knight to a5, striking this bishop, also taking a look at this b3 square. If the bishop drops back, well, we are now just winning this pawn, because the bishop was defending it and white just lost the pawn. If they play bishop b3, so they can defend the pawn, well, you can just take, and then win this pawn as well. And the best move for white is actually to play something like queen d3 or even b3. So for example queen d3 here, then we are still winning the pawn, but this one is also falling. And a move you can also see played is b3, just because after you take, which you should still do, take, you have this position, takes, but now this pawn is a little bit weak, a little bit too advanced. And this is already a good position for black, and you will be able to fight against this pawn and capture it in the future. So that is if they push the pawn. Of course they don't have to. Maybe they play a little bit of better move like rook here. And then we always have the same idea. You want to develop this bishop, but of course you cannot go here. You also don't want to block your own queen, because this queen is useful stopping this pawn. So we play b6. For example here, queen d2, bishop b7. And now we have the bishop on this diagonal, and it will also help in supporting this d5 square. So let's make a good move for white. White is trying to line up here. And then this is our position. And here there are a couple of plans for black. But the idea is that you want to push c5 and then attack this pawn in the center and capture it. We cannot do that because our knight is here. So we are going to play knight to a5. This bishop has to move. If it moves somewhere here, of course you can always capture, and then bam. White's position is now damaged, and then you can play a move like c6 even to stop this pawn. If white goes back, it's probably best to go here, so that they are defending this knight, because your bishop will otherwise be able to capture it. So let's say white goes back there, then you play c5 attacking the center. And here there are a couple of ideas, so you can always keep the same structure in mind. It's really not that difficult. Just go for this approach with d5. They capture you, the queen, you go back, you do this kingside setup with the castling, and then you go for this setup on the queen side, here with the c5 break. So of course, if white captures you, well, you can actually go for the queen trade, and then develop your bishop for free, and this will be a good starting position for you. Also, the rook cannot infiltrate because your knight is protecting that square. If they don't take, which is also possible, but I'm gonna have to take a look what else they can play. Maybe if they just make a random pawn move, for example. There's actually a nice sidestepping move here. You can play queen to c8. And you might think, why would you play queen to c8? That's such a silly move, but that's not true, because here we have rook to d8, and we can put the rook on this open file. Also, if white captures here, we have rook to d8, threatening the queen. The queen has to go back, and then you can even take here with queen takes c5. Your idea is to put the other rook in, and then you will have a lot of attacking chances here. You will also be able to reuse your knight here, and we are still threatening to capture this one at some point if this bishop were to move. Different variation I wanted to show you is here. So almost all players will capture your d5 pawn, but sometimes you will get the advanced variation. And the advanced variation is amazing. You actually love the advanced variation even more than when they capture. The advanced variation is when they play pawn to e5. So I will now teach you how to play this advanced variation. So the idea is what to do if white pushes their pawn. So this is a really good position for us because we can go for this French defense setup, but we will be able to get our bishop outside of the pawn chain instead of having it stuck here, because in the French defense it's usually stuck. So c5, usually you'll see something like knight f3, and we are straight up going to pin this knight. And this is already a really good position for us. Also, many white players love to play d4 and these kinds of positions, but it's going to be really hard for them to defend this, because we have multiple ways to attack this pawn. For example, here you could play with white if you want to make a better move, bishop e2 first. We're going to play knight c6, so we're already threatening this pawn. So we have this really easy threat. We are going to exchange the bishops, and then we are going to win this pawn. So how will you solve this for white? I mean, this one is under attack, and yeah, your knight is going to be captured, so it's hard to solve this. Some players like to go for this d4 approach, but then you just have take, and then take with the pawn, and we have a free pawn. So that's a really good position. For example, here, probably the best approach for white is to do something like this, but that's also not a problem because we have this French setup. I'm going to see if I can find a move, but it's pretty hard to find a good move. Maybe this check, knight c6, let's say castles. And then you just have this idea, move your knight out to this square or even this square and move your bishop out. So it's pretty easy, you don't need to know a lot of theory. You just want to go for this early bishop, trade it at some point and try and fight for the center. Else sometimes you will also see something like c3 because they will try to push this d4. But that's not a problem. Here you can also develop your bishop, but since the knight is not out yet, I would say develop it to f5. They are going to play the knight, and then you just have this easy plan that if they take you, you take with the bishop. And if they don't take you, let's say they play bishop e2, of course, not king e2. Here we have plans of playing knight to over here and a knight to g6. If they capture you, it doesn't really matter, you can just go here because now we have a double attack on this pawn, and also of course protecting it with the bishop is not possible because we're going to take it. Also this pawn is under attack. They can always try to defend this one if they want to, at which point we can capture here for free, or you could even launch an attack on this one. This move doesn't really work because otherwise they lose the rook, so they would have to capture like this, for example. And then still we have this this pawn which is free. This move is also playable, but here you run into this annoying check. So I would say just try to capture this pawn in the center. So yeah, that's it for the advanced variation. I don't think there's much more I need to tell you. Just develop your bishop first to here or here, then close the pawn chain. And then for development, there are a couple of things. You can always do this zigzag move with the knight, and then put your bishop here, castle, put your rook here on the c file, and you will have a really easy game. So that's it. Just a quick shout out. If you want to join my chess community for people who are online almost daily and want to improve, check the first link in the description. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.